Hello, everybody. I'm Secular Spirit, and I'm joined in this video by none other than Haram Doodles, the organizer of Ex-Muslim Awareness Month, which is happening right now this December. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
Doing great on my end. And before we get going with the main video topic, I was just wondering if you could tell everyone watching a little bit about what Ex-Muslim Awareness Month is and what main topics you want to cover with it this month.
Sure. So, Ex-Muslim Awareness Month was just an idea that really actually was born out of the Ex-Muslim subreddit. Um, we really just someone asked like, why don't we have our own awareness month for apostates? And I really just kind of took the idea, ran with it, or just got a bunch of ex-Muslims together. I reached out to you as well just to see if there was any interest in having sort of a joint action month that was dedicated for us. There is right now, November is Islamophobia Awareness Month, and so really it was out of protest in and really kind of speaking up and raising more awareness about just what ex-Muslims go through, and that really, at the end of the day, we exist. And so we're now in year three, and we're going to be probably talking a lot about why Muslims fear and have an irrational fear of ex-Muslims. So look out for more on that. Yeah.
If you want to find out more about Ex-Muslim Awareness Month, I highly recommend checking out Haram Doodle on Instagram. I should also mention that she is an incredibly talented artist, and I love her Haram Doodles, which you can check out on Instagram. They're often hilarious and always poignant critiques of Islam. So please do check it out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of the things I noticed was something that you focused on regularly in your content, in your doodles, was the issue of how Islam treats LGBTQ people and how it just
Mm.
views those issues in general, how it teaches Muslims to view those subjects. And that's why I thought it might be interesting to do this video with you. And the idea came to me actually from a TikTok video that my father sent me. So my father's 70 years old,
Oh,
and he is the he's the biggest TikTok user. He's on it like all day, every day it seems. And he sometimes sends me stuff that's related to Islam that he thinks might be interesting for me to talk about on the channel. Uh, I do have TikTok, but I just kind of use it as a place to decompress. So I try to avoid religious content. Do you use
boy.
TikTok?
I actually don't use TikTok, but I can see, I mean, I kind of use Instagram in that same way. And so I also don't use Instagram for any of the Muslim content, but I get a healthy dose of it from everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say you're not really missing out on much, even though it does come in handy in keeping
Yeah.
tabs on what's popular in the zeitgeist or what's
Mhm.
trending, I suppose. I mean, I'm generally aware that there's a few really massive Muslim content creators on TikTok. There's a few,
Mm.
they're like husband and wife couples who will do videos about, who can see my hair? Can my father-in-law see my hair?
Mhm.
Can my brother-in-law see my hair? And they try to do it in a way that's quirky and fun, and I kind of find that problematic. Have you ever seen those kinds of videos?
Yeah, I have. And I can't help but to just cringe for a little bit. And
Yeah.
also just go like, I don't know, to make it sound like it's fun to be in that situation. It just, it like it's almost triggering, I think. And that's why it's like when you're trying to actively avoid Muslim content and then you're being sent that Muslim content, either as examples or just even from your family, I think it just, yeah, you sort of like take a deep breath and you're like, all right, let me
Mhm.
muster up some energy to watch this.
Exactly. Like the thing I find so surreal about it is you can go from a video that's in the style of something lighthearted, talking about cats and or
Mm.
capybaras or whatever. So one example of a really big TikTok channel is Will and Sana, I think are their names, and they do these lighthearted videos about which person can see her without her hijab, and it's done in that same kind of lighthearted fun style of well, look at how I'm being oppressed by the hijab, but no, it's totally okay. I'm totally fine with it, and all these double standards for women, it's totally cool. And I think that's the normalization part
Mm.
that I find problematic, because this is coming out to a lot of people who might be considering converting to Islam, people who don't know about Islam, and it comes from this maybe perspective of eliminating prejudice, but it also teaches to normalize what I would say are the harmful aspects of the religion.
I think it really kind of it is harmful just because it speaks to the patriarchy in Islam and it speaks to the sexism and misogyny that women experience. And it's unfortunate that women sort of accept it as, well, that's just how it is. Sort of like the Mandalorian, right? Like this is the way. And you're like, no, this is not the way. And so I think that's for me it's sort of sad. It's really sad to see that because there's so many of us that are trying to get away from that lifestyle and get away from that way of life, and here you are, really kind of making it seem like everything is, rainbows and bubblegum. And when the reality is actually, no, it's not. It's really kind of going back to these 7th century values of what they wanted back in the day, to that women were just completely in the background, silenced, really just out of the picture. And I think that's probably what worries a lot of Muslims too, is that like these women sort of making it a point to like march on the streets, making it a point to like be up front and center in leadership positions. And I have to see like just it's probably irking them the wrong way, seeing more and more women lead and really be in front and not be hidden and silenced.
And that's why this video that my dad sent me was so interesting, because it's
Mm.
two Muslim women content creators who have this channel. I'd never heard of it before when he sent me the video. It's called The Prestige Queens. They have
Mhm.
about 260,000 subscribers or followers on TikTok. And the subject was covering something, again, that really doesn't mesh what I think is a lot of people, especially in the West, in terms of their values, and that's LGBTQ issues. But they came at it from a different perspective. So yeah, let's watch just to start things off.
I am a lesbian Muslim. Am I going to hell? That's a question of a Muslim sister. How do you want to answer it?
It is very important for us to understand that being gay and Muslim does not take you out of Islam, like a lot of people say. That is a misconception. Being a Muslim means having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That's what makes you a Muslim. That's something that we want you to understand. Following the teachings of Islam as much as you can. You're a human being. You can't control your feelings and what you feel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is so merciful. He knows what's in our hearts. He knows what's in our minds, and He knows the struggles that we're facing in our lives. Do not despair of Allah's mercy. Allah is the most forgiving. Allah is the most merciful. It does not take you out of Islam. That's one thing we want you to know, my sister. Your identity should not make you feel less of a Muslim. It should not make you feel unworthy of Allah's love. Do not.
Okay, so we're almost already at the end of this like 2 minute video, and what is the thing that is missing so far in everything they've said? What was the
Never answered the
question?
question.
So going back to the beginning, what was the question? Am I going to hell? So if you're someone who's actually wondering about these things, what's your takeaway from this?
Um, well, from off the jump, she answers it with, well, it doesn't take you out of Islam. And that's probably the most disingenuous answer you could ever give because A, you're not even answering the fact that she like asked, am I going to hell? And imagine the person even asking this question and how much courage it probably had to for them, like how much courage they needed to even ask that question in the first place. I think I'm going, that's probably something that they're really extremely worried about. I think just the way we're worried about when we're trying to leave Islam and like, oh my God, am I going to go to hell? I'm sure that person who is the lesbian Muslim, she is probably also really worried about this too. And I think that's where we come to sort of like this head to head, really kind of just decision whether, and I'm sure in her mind she's probably like, can I be a lesbian while I'm Muslim when homosexuality is a sin? And I just, yeah, I feel for that person, really. I have no feelings for these two that are doing this TikTok series. But I think just even hearing that she says, the Shahada makes you the Muslims, and you're a human being, you can't control what you're doing. Um, it's it's like you're hearing all the excuses and all the ways they can explain it without saying, yes, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah, but what it seems to be the case is they almost want to, almost like politicians, they want to reframe
And
the arguments.
yeah,
They don't want to talk about it being a sin. They don't want to
yeah,
talk about hell. They don't want to talk about the negative stuff. They want to focus on God still loves you. You're still a Muslim. And there's almost this element of you just have to have faith, and as long as
hmm,
you go on the right path, you'll be fine. So let's just finish
right.
off the video and see what else they say.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll give us an answer to the question.
That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates you. The people around you might be judging you for it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's inside your heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide you and grant you peace and blessings, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you. Just know that you are still a Muslim, and only Allah can decide who's going heaven and hell, inshallah.
And I hope that answers your question. That was a deep one, but I
No,
hope
it
that answers your
doesn't.
question. Guys, keep sending your questions in.
No, so we don't get an answer to the question there. And to me, the first thing I'll mention is that this doesn't really square with what I was taught as a Muslim.
Mm.
So I was taught that homosexuality is a sin. It's as simple as that, and it's one of the sins that will lead you to hell. It's like one of the worst things you can do, an abomination, uh, something that is an insult to the nature of things. Like you are violating the nature of reality,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah. Yep.
And while that was what I was taught, I was aware that there were Muslims, including some Muslims in my own family, that essentially had this same viewpoint as these Muslim women, where as long as you profess your belief in God and that you try to be a good person in all the ways that you can, God will see what's in your heart. So you don't have to worry, because God would never send someone who's a true believer to hell, even if they've sinned, because he's forgiving. What
Yeah.
was your experience like in being taught this subject?
Pretty much exactly the same. Really kind of always hearing, and I think especially moving to the US, I think it worried my parents and a lot of Muslim family and community a lot more that it was pretty much accepted here. And it wasn't even like, you know, the Marriage Act hadn't even been passed, and so we weren't even at that level of normalization. And this is like, the 90s, for example, early 2000s even. But it definitely, like, growing up with this sort of fear, and the fear of not being gay, right? And not accepting anyone who's gay either. So it's kind of a dual thing that, like, you can't do it because it's sin, and if other people do it, that they're sinning as well. And so, um really, I think just growing up, I had a gay friend, and in my little kid brain, I could never even, like, I just couldn't understand that I'm taking this bus with this kid every single day. I'm friends with him, I talk to him all the time, and yet he's gonna go to hell just because his sexual orientation happens to be gay. I could never understand that, and I think for me, it was always from a place of just loving anybody around me, who it didn't matter who they were and what they practiced and who they, like it. I'm grateful that I approached life that way, but I know plenty of people that even if I were to defend my gay friend, they'd be like, well, stop hanging out with him. Stop, associating with him, because even by association, you might be sinning. So I don't know if you had that too, of like just even being told not to be friends.
Not really, because in my case, because I was living in Dubai, I
Mm,
didn't see gay people. So
sure.
I was sure that they must exist, but my perception was
Yeah.
always it's people who are like way out of the realm of Islam, people in America that I would see in movies, TV
Yeah.
shows. I didn't have like a personal connection in my own life until, of course, I moved to Canada, and that's really when I started to question Islam and eventually leave it. And part of
Mhm.
that, and this is something I've talked about elsewhere on my channel, part of my experience was just watching Hollywood movies like Brokeback Mountain, because that was my only avenue to explore what the perspective, the life situation, the struggles of uh, someone who was LGBTQ. Uh,
Yeah.
that's the only place where I could find that perspective.
Yeah.
Movie, not in my day to day life, because as I think is often the case, the ones that do have those, as they would be described, unnatural desires, hide it. They might even
Yeah.
try hiding it from themselves, and
Yeah.
that can cause untold damage. And this is the part that bugs me about what these creators are doing, because it's almost like a false form of acceptance, where they're
Mhm.
saying, we love you, God loves you, but underneath that is this idea of, well, we do love you, but it's conditional. It's conditional on you seeing that what we're saying is right and what you're doing is wrong. And it's conditional on you having that realization and working on it to no longer be in the wrong. So
Yeah.
that's not real acceptance. That's not real love.
Right. And even like just the answer that they gave to this person even asking the question, they may have made it sound like Allah is gonna forgive you, is most merciful, all the, all the bells and whistles. But at the end of the day, that's probably not gonna make the person feel good anyway, because at the end, I think they said something like Allah decides whether you go to hell or heaven. And so imagine now. You're like, shit, so now I gotta wait until I die to understand if I'm gonna go to hell or heaven, but I'm not gonna get an answer right now. And I think that's the most unfortunate part of this, is that that person's probably gonna live with a lot of fear.
And a lot of guilt, because if you think
Yeah,
about it, it's like this added burden where you're being
right.
told, look, God who created you still loves you despite your sin
Yeah,
and your haram actions. So then it increases
right.
the pressure on you to try to find some way to compartmentalize your desires, to compartmentalize what you
Yeah.
feel is true to yourself, and to shed it completely, which can lead to all sorts of psychological, emotional
Hmm.
damage.
Yeah.
But there's more. So the Prestige Queens did a part two, which my father also sent me. Make sure
Funny.
I'm
Thanks, Dad.
completely on track with everything. Yeah, thanks, Dad. So let's see part two.
To be a homosexual.
If a person wants to be, they're free to be a homosexual. If they don't want to be, they're free not to be a homosexual. I have interacted with so many people who are homosexual. They get along with me just like people who are Jewish and Christian, and those who don't have a religion.
Islam forbids homosexuality as a practice.
So that person, in case you don't know, is Mufti Menk, who is a very popular scholar, especially online. And now we're hearing from Muhammad Hijab, who is, what would you describe him? Is he well, I know he's some sort of scholar, but like a YouTube personality. I know some
Yeah,
refer to him as a dawah boy as well.
yeah, for sure.
It's
Mhm.
not as a feeling, because no one is. You can say someone is not in control of how they feel in some cases, and we accept that. So if someone feels in a certain way, then it's forbidden to act upon it. Now, Islam forbids this. It doesn't mean that if someone practices it, by the way, they become an ex-Muslim, or that they leave Islam, or they excommunicate. They're still within the fold. It's just seen as a major sin.
Muslims, keep yourself to yourself. Stop doing Allah's job. It's Allah's job to judge others, not you. On the day of judgment, you're going to be standing next to that gay brother and sister, and you're going to get judged the same way he's being judged. So you ain't no different.
SubhanAllah, like we go around judging people, this and that. You're going hell, you're going Jannah, you're going. We don't know who's going hell. We don't know who's going Jannah. For you to judge people and say you're going to hell, and you're so sure about it, SubhanAllah. You're so sure that person is going to hell. That is wrong. Wallahi billahi, that is wrong. That is just not in our teaching. We are not saying anything except Allah's mercy is so big. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive you regardless of what you do. Islam is what's in your heart, what's in your mind. But for you to go around telling people you're kafir, you're Muslim, you're kafir, you're Muslim, you're going hell, you're going Jannah, who are you to judge people?
Wallah, who are you to judge people? Seriously.
So
Okay,
there's
so
definitely one main woman that speaks more to this.
this subject, yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
expert on the subject, you might be able to say. So a little bit of continuation of what they were saying in part one, mainly that, you know, that the judgment should come from Allah and focus on Him. And then I think an interesting idea of, you'll see that in Christianity as well, that famous saying of hate the sin, love the sinner. And
Mhm.
that's basically what Muhammad Hijab was saying on the subject, that, you know, you can have the thoughts, but that's different than acting upon it. That's where the sin
Right.
is. So my question for you is, do you think that this perspective is something that is a positive improvement coming from Muslims?
Um, Maybe to a certain extent. I think it maybe avoids the instant sort of anger and fear that's maybe felt by a lot of Muslims when they do hear that someone is gay, whether it's in their own family or in the community. And also, that doesn't actually give that person the freedom to be gay because there's still this sort of like, it's almost like they tied a rope to your leg and they let you go a little bit, but they didn't let you actually, they didn't just untie the rope. And so I
They're
think
still
that's kind of how,
controlling you.
yeah, yeah. So there's still that level of control that like, okay, yeah, if you feel it, apparently it's a feeling. So you can feel it, but you can't act on it. And so just even I think as a Muslim, also agreeing with that too, right? Like even sitting next to my gay friend who I was like in my mind, I'd be like, I hope he's not acting on it. I'm sure he is gay. But realizing that that's not how the body works.
Yeah,
And this
it's
is not how sex
almost,
works either.
no, that's a great point, because it's almost like they're saying, for example, like people who have anger issues and they're told about anger management and how
Yeah.
it's all about how you approach a subject and how you think about it in your mind, and to let
Hmm.
that anger go. They're making it seem as if it's something similar as not losing your temper at someone
Yeah.
cutting you off in traffic,
All
to
right.
just have a different perspective and find a new way to shed those desires.
Right.
And I think that's something that's so unfair and shows such a lack of understanding of human nature and how sexuality works.
Right. And it's I'm reminded honestly of in the last I think in the last year or so, there was an ex-Muslim person who I was actually connected with. He was from India. He ended up, because he was bi, and so he identified as gay, he identified as bi, and sort of like, I think people are sort of discovering who they are, and it's okay to go, okay, like maybe I'm bi, maybe I'm gay, maybe I'm straight, right? Whatever they're doing, it's their business, right? And unfortunately, his family and his parents actually put him through conversion therapy. And part of that conversion therapy was going, you can feel this, but you can't act on it. And it's like, so now, and unfortunately, it's like the saddest thing. He actually did end up committing suicide.
Oh,
Um, and so like you hear these stories of like, it's almost as if you've given them a little bit of leeway to just feel that, but not actually act upon it, and the devastating consequences of controlling that, controlling a person's just biological needs or the sexual orientation that they're identifying with. I think that it's something biological. You can't just like turn it off, right? Like for example, Islam, you can actually leave it behind. It's not biological, but something like sexual orientation, you're expecting somebody to actually like, snap. It's almost like, oh, just snap out of it. It's like, okay, but it's not that easy. And even like this conversation goes beyond that, right? Like when you look at LGBTQ community as a whole, and also in its own particular and unique ways, we're talking about a lot of homophobia and transphobia, and a lot of sort of fear of not showing up as the binary, just man and woman, which is what Allah intended. Like that's how He made the world. That's how He made Adam and Eve, and also Eve from Adam. And so, if there's anything beyond that, right? Like if there's any mixture of genders or sexual orientations beyond that, that's all forbidden. And it's really just, it's sad to hear so many people actually like make it sound like it's not a big deal, when it actually puts people's lives in danger and it risks people. It like basically creates a really unsafe situation for them to be in.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think the thing that saddens me the most is, especially if you look at the comments underneath these videos from these content creators,
Mhm.
is they're actually the moderates who care more because, just to pull a few examples from the comments,
Yeah.
it is haram and forbidden. Yes, you're doing a sin which will take you to hell. Must repent, ask for forgiveness soon. Satanic action you are practicing. Call a spade a spade. People living in America have their own Islam. Actually, it sounds like they're in the UK, if anything.
Mm.
Definitely hell. It's very haram. It's haram and forbidden. And then, of course, people didn't like what Mufti Menk and Muhammad Hijab were saying on the subject. One person says, Astaghfirullah, Mufti Menk, you should have said it is not right to be homosexual. You should have said it is a grave sin. And this person says, Mr. Menk was behind women a few years back. Now he's back behind gays. We need to take his Mufti degrees back. Brother Hijab has lost respect in my eyes. Allah created man and woman for a reason. Sorry if I hurt anyone. One person says, is Mufti Menk gay, by the way? I always wondered, and this video confirms it. Obviously, we don't know if these people are Muslims posting this stuff. But this one really blew me away. It's amazing how our morals has changed over the years just to suit our situations. So sad. And that brings up the final thing I wanted to talk to you about is there's all this talk about Islam reforming and changing its perspective, its teachings on certain things. And you could maybe compare that to what's happening in a lot of forms of Christianity, a lot of sects of it, where,
Mhm.
for example, there's churches that accept LGBTQ people nowadays, and that's becoming more and more normal, where there's even
Yes.
gay pastors, gay preachers.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something that's possible in Islam? And even if it was possible, is this really a good thing when it's ultimately this kind of false acceptance that we're seeing?
Um, I think that so there I think there is a gay imam, I believe. Africa maybe, I want to say. Um
There's that one, yeah.
yeah. Right, right. There's probably a few mosques
There's
as
probably a
well where
few, yeah.
there's yeah, like a couple of mosques that are trying to basically like sort of reinterpret Islam from a more sort of maybe humanist lens, which I'm just not sure how that's even possible. But I think that we do need the diversity of perspectives in order for us to bring more attention to the extreme side of Islam. It's the unfortunate consequence that we have to live through the false acceptance and hearing it over and over again, and it makes us really frustrated and angry, obviously, knowing that a lot of the information that they're saying is just it's honestly just bullshit, right? Because if you just if we just picked up our phones right now and if we googled homosexuality Islam, that's all we wrote. We didn't even write homosexuality is sin or is it okay, just write homosexuality Islam. The first few things that come up is about how it's forbidden and how it's a sin. And so no matter how much people downplay it or try to hide that, I think everyone generally, the 1 point whatever billion Muslims all agree homosexuality is a sin. I don't think there's like anything that like you can sort of argue against. People might make ways of going, well, it's okay. It's okay if you don't act on it. And I think they're probably trying to make sense of how do you accept a human, how do you accept your family member without actually like disowning them, or maybe, you're not going to abuse them. So I think it comes from a place of um trying to accept somebody that your religion says you can't accept, right? And at the same time, I think we still need to speak up about why it's a sin, right? Like, so I think these things need to happen at the same time, because there's always going to be that fear of a lot of Muslims who maybe are LGBTQ and they can't let go of the fear of like not believing in God. I think that's one thing that probably holds a lot of people back, is just getting scared of going to hell. So it's unfortunate that we have to kind of hold both things and see that both things need to happen at the same time, because they are. We can't just like expect that like suddenly Muslims are going to stop talking like this, or yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, the ultimate irony is that while Muslims are misunderstanding how integral to someone's nature their sexual orientation is,
mhm,
they're viewing their own religion in that way, where they cannot even imagine leaving Islam because it's
yeah,
part of their nature in from their perspective.
all
So
right,
they're trapped in it, and there's
mm,
something interesting psychologically going on there, where they can't see that in themselves, and yet
right,
they're trying to force it in others when
mm,
their sexual orientation is a core part of them.
yeah.
So
And especially even like hearing from LGBTQ Muslims of just that feeling of as if like you're like in a closet within a closet, right? That like you're closeted as an ex-Muslim, and then you're also closeted as a gay person or a lesbian. And I think that how unfortunate is it that like our religion our doesn't teach us acceptance for just who they are and letting them live as they want. It teaches us to sort of see that and like pity it. You know, like we pity people who are homosexuals, because we're in the back of our mind we're like, oh shit, they're gonna go to hell. And I think there are plenty of times where I was sitting on that bus with next to my gay friend, and that was the thought that was coming to my mind of going, oh shit, this kid is gonna go to hell. And just I can't, like, it actually used to make me really sad and depressed about it, and even asking my parents about like why was that, and they're like, nope, because it's a sin. You can't. It's a really disgusting act. And so when you hear that enough times as a kid, that's what you start to learn, right? Like you that's exactly what you pick up as well.
And that's all from us. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And let us know if you want me and Haram Doodles to do more reaction videos like this. And I also highly recommend that you follow Haram Doodles on Instagram. The link is in the video description below. And is there anything else you want to say about Ex-Muslim Awareness Month while we have you here?
If you are an ex-Muslim, I would say share your story with one of us. And we'd love to highlight as many and uplift as many voices as we can. I think if we can increase the belonging for our own community, I'm hopeful that, you know, more and more of us will be comfortable and really kind of feel okay to question, disbelieve, and leave Islam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and same goes to anyone watching who's questioning a Muslim. If you want to reach out to me, please feel free to do so. So yeah, thank you again, everyone, for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon, and hopefully
Bye.
Ram Doodles will be back to the channel soon.
For sure.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.